The Persona 3 manga might be the most unique interpretation to Persona 3's one-of-a-kind story, even with its many various iterations of video games with base Persona 3, FES, and Portable, and the 4 stellar Persona 3 movies, which I will be making a video on soon, so subscribe so you can catch that when it drops, because it's gonna go hard. I got a lot to say about those. But the Persona 3 manga's uniqueness is what allows it to still hit hard and be faithful with its characterization, interpretation of main and side moments, with plenty of original ones implemented. Not to mention, because it's a manga, the beautiful and detailed 2D art. So I decided I'll make a video series about this underappreciated gem, starting with the great and unique portrayal of the last sections of the game, the final ascension of Tartarus, and the ending bouts with Strega and the infamous Nyx herself. Stay to the end and I'll tell you what I'll be tackling next in the Persona 3 manga, even apart from the ending. And as a little hint of what is immediately next, this is technically a part 1. But that's good enough of a preamble. Let's get into the meat. Starting with chapter 41, I think really is where C's makes their final resolve for the end. It's the final days of prep and truly reaffirming their emotions and new selves that they become, with some last minute acts of figuring themselves out just because, especially those of Aigis, Makoto, and Junpei, which makes me happy because those are my 3 favorite Persona 3 characters, number 4 being Chidori. Akihiko is treating them out, and thanks to this, that was when they received Strega's final message to the world, coming out as an article about the power of Nyx, the bringer of blessings, and confirming the truth of mankind's desires and saving them from it by way of faith in her. So this part is a bit similar to the games, the anonymous calling out of C's as those who've been exposed to the truth but failing to comprehend it, saying they themselves intend to make the pilgrimage to the promised place to welcome Nyx, all as their quiet revolution. Now, one thing very common in the non-game adaptations, such as the movies and the manga, is that they're able to treat not only Makoto as a full character, but more freedom to spend time alone with other characters without making it feel like padding in a game with gameplay. Whereas sometimes in these Persona games, you'll feel like you'll have some seemingly empty days between scheduled main story events. So although reading this article about Strega's final actions was very similar to the game, it paves the way, along with other aspects prior, to many new moments we get in the final battles against Strega and Tartarus later on. And not just there, but it stokes the flames for some small but very potent final highlights from, like I said before, Aigis, Makoto, and Junpei, but not just them, some of the others too, but these are the highlights. Let's start with Junpei. Junpei, having resolved himself to living without Chidori, suddenly finds out before he can even be told that Chidori is alive, when Mitsuru is secretly talking to Makoto alone about how to approach this with Junpei. But without even hearing all of the details yet, he dashes to the hospital immediately. But when the others catch up, for some reason, it turns out he hasn't even gone inside the hospital room, so he's just sitting outside her door. The reason why? Well, he doesn't even know, but he's visibly sweating. Once inside, he can hardly believe it. He confirms with the doctor that her health is completely fine now, even if after trying to call her, she just asks who he is. She's lost the last few memories of her life, and if you remember, this event of Chidori being alive is something optional that you can unlock in Persona 3 FES, which honestly, I wasn't that big a fan of until I read this manga and how it continues to handle it from this point on. So hear me out, I know you, even me when I was reading this, had some preconceived notions, but I was pretty open to it, so hear me out from here, because the execution is actually very heartwarming and sweet, without feeling like it ruins or spoils the messages of Persona 3, because after all, people really forget that Persona 3's main theme isn't just about the fact of death, it's about the beauty of life itself, and that isn't solely in regards to appreciating one's life after they've already passed. Context and nuance matters here, but let's get back to it. We clearly see as this Junpei talks to this new Chidori, along with the doctor and Mitsuru, the Chidori he knew is gone, and there's so much hope and happiness in him because she can be so much more now, because all she has is the memory of a lone light at the end of the darkness. She gets annoyed that Junpei said it's better if she forgot the nightmare, telling him not to assume the feeling she has was all a dream, and that all it was a nightmare to her. Her special someone that she doesn't know the identity of yet is out there. And then the doctor actually brings up something very interesting to explaining this. When she has pain in her head after remembering lots of flowers in her hospital room, as we know, she would add life to them as they wilted, he says she may be able to recall with the flowers in her room, saying that the ones she imbued with life still would never wilt again. So they had them analyzed in a lab, and then the doctor and Mitsuru finalized that just maybe because the doctor had laid the flowers on her body as a tribute during her autopsy, and since that was when she began to come back to life, that the life she put in those flowers flowed back into her body. Yet now, just like her memories, that ability is gone. But the doctor is happy to see she's found a new will to live, which she responds that she must find that special someone, refusing to just lie in bed forever. And then when Mitsuru probes about what she will do when she finds him, Chidori just says none of her business while blushing, and this breaks Junpei in a good way. Mitsuru calls it a miracle of 2 hearts bound, and this is their win. Chidori panics asking why Junpei is crying. He just says he can't help it because he's just never been this happy. It's just incredible how much the 2D manga art expresses so many things. It makes you locked into what's happening. It makes you appreciate some of these things even more. So this to me was a fantastic take on the conclusion of Junpei and Chidori's story. It makes me more split on what exactly is the better path or what I prefer. Keeping her dead, you know, adds on to P3's message and further ties into each of them having an individual loss with someone during the game. However, execute a revival like this, it doesn't to me take away anything from the game's main themes, because not only does Junpei still have learned all of this in the first place, but the Chidori he knew is gone, and they basically have to start from almost scratch. So this still allows for Junpei's resolve to continue to help him mature and cherish someone real to him. And they've gone through so much suffering in Persona 3, even outside of their individual losses, but losses as a group, it's like finally a win, a real win. Like, thank you, please give them something. I think adding on another real positive, because there are plenty of positives and good and happy things in this game, it's just having one more win in there really feels nice. Even outside the hospital room, Fuuka and Yukari are just crying tears of joy. Then Makoto and Aigis are just stealing looks at each other, having internal thoughts about the preciousness of human love, especially Aigis. But to make it even better, there's one more Junpei and Chidori scene I want to mention. On January 30th, the day before their final ascent to Tartarus, Junpei sees Chidori one last time. They banter a bit as Junpei brings her flowers and asks her if she's tired of him visiting so much, and she just tells him thank you, but to knock that off. But then all Junpei does is asks to please hold her hand. She's surprised, of course, but goes along with it, and they just stay in silence while he kneels at her bed, holding both of her hands. She kind of asks if he's done yet, but he takes a little bit more time before he's off, and she's just blushing up a storm. Such a tender moment. I can't help but be glad it exists. I didn't think I could love these two anymore, but this helped. On to Aigis. Now, Aigis has her own little mini arc in this final section before Tartarus, as she really ponders more about what it means to live. And due to this incident with Junpei and Chidori, we get the moment she becomes wholly aware of what it means to love. Extremely aware of her feelings towards Makoto, turning from admiration and devotion into actual human love. She gets a whole segment on whether or not she truly deserves it or will even be able to experience what that means at all. And gets some great advice from special two people in a very original scenes from original story branches that aren't in any other interpretation. And they just make the potency of their relationship all the way continuing to the ending so much more heart-wrenching and heartwarming. Oh, it's amazing. But I'm giving y'all a little cliffhanger because I will be doing an entirely separate video on the Persona 3 manga's interpretation of Makoto and Aigis' relationship. And I'll not only be going into those original story branches in general, but the entire path throughout the Persona 3 manga, because it's so good. There's so much new and detailed stuff, man. And you'll get my gushing and analysis of it too, so subscribe and hit the bell so you know when that happens. Then for Makoto, it actually starts with a nice one-on-one talk with Toriumi about the future. I love her, by the way. I love you, Maya. They talk about his aims, how he wants to look better at himself to decide even if it looks like his mind's made up, taking responsibility for his choices and how much he's changed over the year and if he's even noticed himself. Toriumi gets to blushing at his honesty, and they both share a smile at his indifferent confidence and in his new self. Him and Aigis meet up to have a conversation on the roof after their guidance counselor conversations, and they share a beautiful heart-to-heart that's similar to ones in Aigis' social link but pretty original. And like I said, there's much more to this too. Hey, but you'll get that in that other video. Subscribe, I'm trying to tell you, I got heat coming, man. And then finally, it all converges on the true final moments lying in their talk in the dorm before their climb. Similar to the game, they ask each other if they're ready, and Yukari brings up the possibility that they might lose their memories if the Dark Hour is wiped out too. So they all vow to never forget and to promise to meet back up on graduation day at the place with a great view of the city on the rooftop. Yukari tells Makoto that after it's all over, she'll try and go see her mom again in confidence. And then he leads them off, though not before one last step into the Velvet Room, talking about his contract and taking responsibility for his decisions no matter what the outcome, and he says his teacher said the same. Honestly, this manga not only keeps the tie with Elizabeth, but even makes you feel a better connection with Igor too. It feels so personal. Makoto just wanted to check on them one more time, and then Igor sends him off saying they'll grant him strength to the bitter end. Chapter 45, Those Who Live. Since it's not a game, we can have some very full-on fight scenes, choreography, and beautiful artwork to pace up the battles as they climb. One by one, shadow by shadow, we get each character's convictions as they fight tirelessly and with more vigor than ever before. It's amazing. Ken's repayment to Shinji, Akihiko's will to keep his sister and Shinji's light alive, Junpei to make something with his life given to him from Chidori, Fuuka protecting the bond she and everyone else has created all this time, Mitsuru for avenging her father's fire, fueling it with her own spark, Yukari taking the torch from her father and his work, and Aigis wanting them all to live, but most of all for her to finally be able to live her own life. As they ascend, Makoto and Thanatos at the lead, they run into Jin, who tells them Takaya is farther ahead because he's destined for more. Jin reveals he was surprised that Akutsuki was leading Seas for a while, though he only knew him by name because Akutsuki was responsible for were Strega's creation, as in the reason why they were experimented on and became who they were all those years ago. I'll be real, I don't remember if this was in the games or the movies. Let me know if it was in the comments. But what is new, one man wishes to stand on his own 2 feet to face Jin, and it's Akihiko. He wants to pay him back for that underground lockdown they went through, telling the rest of them to go on ahead, but one person stays behind. Who is it? It's Ken, of course. Jin tries to grenade the escaping group, but Koromaru defends them all, summoning Cerberus to take the brunt of the blast. Akihiko launches full force at Jin while Ken heads to Koromaru to check on him, but he's okay, of course, and Koromaru had a determined look in his eye as he faces Makoto, them staring each other down, pushing him to trust Koromaru, leading the rest of them up the stairs. Then back to the fight. It becomes a vicious 1v1 between Akihiko and Jin. Fists versus tools. Jin makes constant smoke screens with his barrage of grenades to lower vision and make distance between him and Akihiko, all while using his throwing knives to strike. But Akihiko doesn't flinch once, as Jin states, dealing punch after punch to Jin's impressive blocks until he creates distance again by hitting Akihiko with a grenade. A little bit more exhausted now, Akihiko asks about how they got to know Shinji in the first place, which Jin just says he came to them, needing the control drugs. He mentions how although Shinji was a lost lamb just like them, Takaya was still so much more than the rest. He then reveals how the Kirijo group back at the time before, really understanding the Dark Hour, would create persona users by taking orphans and societal rejects and forcing them to awaken their persona just to explore Tartarus. And because of those Force Awakenings, the personas were extremely difficult to control, many of them killing their hosts, and what began as 100 subjects cut down to just 3 survivors in 6 months: Takaya, Jin, and Chidori. Jin yells how Takaya led them out of the darkness, so he's unfettered by his path and hopes for no future because he's already seen the world at its worst, so he only lives for the now. Akihiko responds to him that him and Shinji were orphans too, and could have easily ended up like them, but that's why he must do the exact opposite to save the world, making Jin realize how much the same they are, but still claims Akihiko just doesn't understand, and Akihiko continues to deny it, because even with Shinji's hardships, he died facing forward, facing his past and his demons for a better tomorrow, and with both of them shouting each other down, now their personas are released. I must say, not only is the paneling impressive, expressions phenomenal, but the extra original writing for Strega alone, and even tying into Akihiko and Shinji's origin in life, it's amazing to see them make Strega even better, because honestly, I did enjoy Strega already, but I felt like at the end they were just boss fight walls and they didn't do enough with their original stories and origins. But at the end, Akihiko wins, making Jin really think about Akihiko's unbending resolve, bolstered by his connection to his essential brother Shinji, making him look like fools to somebody in the shadows. As the shadows creep in and Akihiko tries to save Jin, he refuses to take the help and pity. So without care, he launches a barrage of grenades on the shadows, wiping them out and himself along with it. On the floor ahead, when the rest of the group reaches Takaya, Mitsuru addresses their past as victims of the Kirijo group. All Takaya does is expand on what Jin mentioned earlier about their care for only living in the now. The delusion of a shapeless future means nothing to his soul. So even when Junpei shouts at him wanting it for a person to throw, he reminds him that Nyx has been revived and is only coming because of the mass will of the many people. He says similar stuff as in the game, but then Aigis comes in. Even after Yukari denies that the people of the world wanted this, Aigis agrees with Takaya that the many people of the world do want this, but it's still wrong to think that way, so they will continue to oppose it no matter what. Mitsuru, just watching Aigis speak about what it means to live, she's captivated. And even though Aigis is unsure if they'll succeed, she can't give up on life so easily. Activating more of Takaya's PTSD, he wants to begin the showdown before Nyx arrives, because they only have so much time here. But Aigis still has something to ask. She asks him if he fears death, assuming he doesn't. He finds it odd considering death is always with people, and more odd that somebody who knows nothing of it like her would presume it's something to be feared. He says the fact that she feels that way at all makes her privileged, and she has nothing to respond with. But that's it. This time Mitsuru takes the plunge into attack first, telling Makoto to get everyone else to the top to prep for Nyx. Takaya asks them if they should really split up, to which Mitsuru says he shouldn't be so concerned. So he shoots at the rest of the group, but Junpei then summons Trismegistus to defend, telling them to go on ahead and he'll stay behind with Mitsuru, because he wants to face Takaya with his blade, assumingly because he was the one who shot him last time, leading to Chidori giving her life force to him in the first place. And can I just say, interactions and moments between Junpei and Mitsuru are something I needed more of, and this manga gave me some. The personalities actually mesh really well in my opinion. Junpei has a very generous sense of humor, maybe it doesn't always hit the mark, but he's always going to try. And even though Mitsuru is pretty stoic, she actually has a generous sense of humor too, the main one that's exceedingly appreciative of Junpei's jokes and antics in the first place, even in the games. And even in Persona 3 dancing, their partner dances have incredible chemistry. Have y'all seen them? Go ahead and look at them. But back to the scrap. Although Takaya is defending pretty well with his gun against Mitsuru's rapier, it doesn't last long before she stabs him in the arm. But he makes a slight comment about her being smart enough to understand humans resisting fate being near impossible, as he grabs her rapier while it's still in his arm and he snaps it, then summons his persona Hypnos. But now Mitsuru and Junpei standing side by side, Junpei especially being so resolved that Takaya has to mention how before he could only cower in fear, but now he's a changed man. Junpei just thanks him, and then Takaya attacks, beginning the brutal battle. It takes both Junpei and Mitsuru's personas to defend and deflect Takaya's onslaught, as he has way more tricks this time. Fire, ice, electricity, trading back and forth. It's hard, but the two are fighting side to side, all three taking heavy hits from one another. Mitsuru goes down first, then Takaya, and then Junpei. But Takaya pretends like he's okay, and Junpei actually believes it, but us readers, we see his real expression throughout that scrap. He was getting hit. Right as Takaya finishes his rant about the inability to stop the inevitable, but just delay it, sends his final attack. Then Ken heroically arrives up the stairs with his persona summon and blocks it, and that's where the turnaround begins. Ken's onslaught allows Junpei to get his footing to support Ken, then Mitsuru in tow to prevent Takaya from getting his gun back. But it's too late. Her attack hits him, but he just takes it and picks it up anyway. Junpei's charging, but he's already committed, so all he can do is try and dodge if he can. Shot 1 to Junpei's left shoulder. Shot 2 to Junpei's right thigh. Takaya sees Chidori's energy behind Junpei, supporting his charge ahead, and Junpei delivers a great sweeping slash to Takaya's torso, sending him all the way to the ground. Takaya then just asks them to kill him, finish him off, do away with him, and all of them just agreed to not kill somebody that's already lost, so he can sit back and repent while he watches them stop the inevitable against all odds. So epic. Cutting away then, Makoto, Aigis, Fuuka, and Yukari reach the apex of Tartarus, and Nyx appears before them. The dialogue before the battle is mostly very similar, except it's only the aforementioned four. They all oppose Nyx's confusion of fighting against her despite it being impossible, no matter if they have to give up their bodies, hearts, and lives. Fitting, with each member of C's now in attendance. And then for what might be my favorite interpretation of the battle against Nyx for the many versions of Persona 3, including the 4th movie Winter Rebirth, which is already incredible.